Hey, y'all, welcome to Geek Freaks. I am Frank, and today I'm joined by Jonathan.
Hey, yo.
And we're going to be talking about Sadie Sink joining the Spider-Man films. BlizzCon is finally returning. We've got some Punisher info, and we're going to be reviewing Invincible Season 3. And our discussion this week is going to be on the future of superhero cinema. How are you doing?
I am fantastic.
Good.
Yeah, nothing I can complain about.
Yeah.
Pretty good week. How about you?
Good, busy. Boy, the network is flying right now, guys. As you guys had met, I believe last week it was, Anime Plus is part of the network now. We've been working on some of their branding and stuff like that. We have another podcast on the way. I don't want to talk about it quite yet because we're still doing some of the preliminary back or the shop stuff. They'll be on the network probably next week, at the end of next week. And then we have another podcast I don't want to mention that's coming back from the grave that I am so excited about. So the network has been quite busy. So it's been great. We'll have more information at the end of the episode too. Let's get started with our question of the week. Jonathan, what's one underrated geek culture gem, a movie, game, book, whatever, you think more people should know about?
So I have one for sure, and then I have one that's kind of an honorable mention because I think it no longer qualifies for it. So
yeah,
I'm going to start with my honorable mention, get it out there. It's Iron Giant. When that first came out, it was just not really, I don't think it was well known, wasn't really popular, anything like that. And then later, now it's like a huge, cult classic or whatever for the geek culture. So that now doesn't qualify. But when it came out, I don't think it was hardly even advertised, right?
Right. Yeah. Kind of sank. It was a Steven Spielberg movie too. So it was like, why is this not going well? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
so
pick.
anyways, that's an awesome one. But the one that didn't get attention then or now, I think, and is one of my favorite animated movies by far, is Titan AE.
Yes, sir.
Remember that?
Oh, yes, I do.
I had to look it up. It's like such a banger cast too.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
How did all these people get together? I think it's just because it was animated, honestly. Like all these great actors got together on a really cool story, and it just did not take off like it should have. But I'm going to lay down some of the main cast. We got Matt Damon, Drew Barrymore, Bill Pullman, who, if you don't recognize him, is the president from Independence Day, John Leguizamo, if I could say that right, Nathan Lane, just Jim Cummings played a lot of the side characters, which he's
he did.
Famous voice actor. Just awesome cast.
The animation style too was so smooth. It was so clean. We're in a new golden age of animation. I think it would do better now. It just came out at a really bad time. At that time, there was like a lot of animation coming out at that, like in a stage, all these different things that were like kind of that kind of cleaner animation, but it was all falling to the wayside. Even Disney was starting to make the shift over to CGI, so it was kind of tough times. But man,
really, I think now would be the time to not remake it in animation, make a live action series out of that story.
Yeah.
It would be awesome. I mean, we could do the sci-fi so well now. It'd be cool.
The opening of that movie where the ships are abandoning Earth is really cool.
Yeah.
It's just watch that alone, guys, on YouTube. Titan AE's intro, it's incredible.
I could see that being done really well by the people doing Star Wars for Disney right now too.
Yeah.
That'd
Absolutely.
be
and they know how to do it on
cool.
a pretty good budget too.
Yeah.
Mine is going to be the film that I think got my generation, for a lot of us, into fantasy in the first place. It also caused a lot of trauma. And that is going to be Neverending Story.
Oh, yeah.
Today's generation don't know about this fantasy gem. It had a 1 and a 2. There was 2 of them. And it's like where Jack Black got his start. There's all kinds of things about this movie. Atreyu and his horse in this like swamp of sadness was like, it still will haunt your dreams if you watched that as a kid. But it was such a good fantasy movie, and it was a really good introduction to like, oh, you could fall into books and like fall into those stories. And it was outstanding. I remember watching it so many times as a kid, and never like all the way through or in one piece, but I recognize all the scenes in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you watched a little bit here, then you got distracted by whatever you're playing with. And like the scene where you had to like walk in between these 2 big statues and you can't look at them. So many little fantasy tropes that today I see still used. It's a great story, guys. So Neverending Story, we need to bring it back, or people need to go revisit it because it is what made millennials fantasy fans before Lord of the Rings came out and all that. It's great.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in so long. I don't really remember a lot of the plot too, so I kind of need to rewatch it just to remember that actual story.
You were pretty young when it was out, when it first came out. Yeah.
But it's a never-ending story, but it's only, an hour and a half, 2-hour movie. It definitely has an end. What if they made that into a new series that would just be open-ended, every season ends open-ended so they could just keep continuing it?
Yeah, there's a sequel to it. The sequel is very good too, as a kid, I would say. Yeah, that would be good, especially with the idea of you're reading the book and you're making the story happen. I think that's a really good thing to push nowadays anyways. So,
Yeah.
and fantasy books are so big.
Modernize it to where it's kind of like a D&D campaign where it's not a book you're reading, but it's a book that you're helping create.
Yeah.
It's a group of friends are together just telling this story, this adventure. Yeah. And every day after school, they come together and maybe they're looking at pictures or something like that. And then that's helping them develop these characters and move along their story they're making.
And you could even bring in some real world elements. Like one of them, their parents are going through divorce. And so that makes its way into the fantasy story. Like a kingdom is starting to fall apart.
That would be really cool. We're making an awesome story now.
We have got to stop sharing good ideas on this podcast, damn it.
Oh, I know. Somebody's getting rich on us.
I know. Damn it. All right, John, let's get into the news for the week. Sadie Sink from Stranger Things, speaking of D&D, is already confirmed to be joining the new Spider-Man film. So that brings into many questions. Who could she be playing? So some early contentions. Jean Grey from the X-Men, of course. Black Cat, she's a Spider-Man character who has not been used yet in live action. Or Mary Jane. Now, everybody's gonna be like, well, Spider-Man's already in love with Zendaya's character, but she's not technically Mary Jane, as in like, so we could make that work. Who would you want to see her play, or do you have any other options?
Well, I love the romance between him and Zendaya, so we don't want to break that up. I think that would create a lot of turmoil with the fans, and it would cost too much to try to pay off for something that we don't know if it would succeed. But what about Spidey-Gwen too? She's not in the MCU yet, is she?
No, she's not in the MCU. She's in like the Spider-Verse movies. So I think once they do like the Secret Wars and they can bring in Miles Morales, they'll bring her in too, probably.
Okay. Yeah, that's the only other person I was thinking. Or, yeah, like you were saying, I'd seen people online saying maybe she'll be Jean Grey also. She's kind of young though to play Jean Grey's character, right? Isn't Jean Grey not a student but a teacher? Well, when we jump in, depending on where in the timeline. Yeah. Okay, yeah, she could be.
Multiple times in the comic books, they go back to like when they're all kind of younger. She'd easily play one of those. I think she would be good for any of those roles. People are also saying, I had a lot of people commenting when I posted this up on Threads, Firestar. I'm like, okay, that's good. I mean, and Marvel with this character could definitely go with something a little bit deeper, and that would be fine. But I think Jean Grey is the best way to do it, because then suddenly you're bringing in an X-Men without having to bring in all the X-Men, and we're just kind of trickling in our X-Men here and there. We've already got Beast, we already got Wolverine. We're just kind of being reintroduced to all of our X-Men again.
And I think they're trying to establish, like, she's definitely not going to be a romantic love interest of his or something like that.
Yeah.
Because that would just be a small, pivot off of his character, a small, like, I don't know, side character to him. Mm-hmm. But I think they'll use her because she's a recognizable, face and name, and she's, big right now from Stranger Things and whatnot, that they would make her a new, like, anchor character, a new staple. So I think Jean Grey is a perfect character for her to play to fit that role.
Yeah.
And to help, move forward with the MCU in the future, because we have a lot of great but aging, actors playing some of our most famous characters and characters that we've seen on screen, honestly, a lot. So it's just a matter of time before they got to start moving into a new generation to keep people's interest. So yeah, I could see them kind of pivoting with her.
And she hasn't been in a lot of things. So there is this level of like, well, she's recognizable, but not known for another role. Typecast, there's the word I'm looking for. She's not typecast yet. So it's really a good time to bring her in. And I mean, she does a hell of a good job. In Stranger Things that last season when she's like floating up, when she's listening to the music and that breaks her and stuff.
And then, perfect. Running and trying to break free from the Mind Flayer, right?
No, that one is Vecna.
Vecna, that's right.
Gotta learn our D&D names, Jalen. Next, BlizzCon is returning in 2026. So what sucks is we have to wait a year for it, but it is returning. And this time it's going to be fully under Microsoft Gaming. So they're actually going to be kind of the one putting it on, really. A couple of things that I'm hoping for out of this new BlizzCon. First off, obviously we're going there. That's a given. But when Phil Spencer and Microsoft acquired Blizzard, one of the things that Phil himself said is that he's a big fan of the StarCraft franchise. The fact that they're not bringing out BlizzCon this year, but we're waiting for next year, I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to announce a new StarCraft. You played StarCraft back in the day, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Is that a game you would come back to? I know you're not much of a Blizzard player right now. Would you come back for that one?
Yeah, I'm just not much of a game player. I don't have time, really. Yeah. Maybe when my son's a little older and he's in school during the day or something like that. But yeah, I hate to just be, I can't be glued to the computer and have him standing next to me wanting to play around.
You need a computer for himself.
But, right. He wanted to get on here and play Minecraft earlier today. So I was like, all right, well,
it's happening.
And so he doesn't really know how to move still in the world. Before he would sit on my lap and I would do stuff and then he would like push my hands, and that was kind of fun. But it's just a matter of time.
Right.
But yeah, I think a new StarCraft would be awesome, and I would definitely get it and at least try to play it. And like you're saying, the fact that they announce, hey, we're gonna do something, but give us time. We need a year to prepare for it.
Yeah.
Very hopeful. That's a very good sign that they're not just gonna, make some animations, some banners or something like that, and just try to reskin or resell something they already made. But they actually have a new project in the hopper that they're trying to, get ready for us and, capitalize on this big event that they did for so many years under a different brand. Yeah, before they got bought. But it brings a lot of attention. A lot of people want to go to it. So yeah, just create the fresh new content to show off there, and you're going to get a lot of people showing up.
I think with the last BlizzCon 2023, which doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but I mean, it's crazy, was notably smaller than other BlizzCons. And there was this kind of aura because it was immediately after the acquisition. There was this aura of like, man, this might be the end of BlizzCons. This is definitely the end of what we think of Blizzard from the heydays. It kind of felt like this transitional phase. And I'm hoping Blizzard can somehow recapture that they went through layoffs and controversies, but it'd be nice if they could recapture this old feeling of like just a good company you wanted to support at all times. They have an uphill battle to do that. I don't know how they can make that up. I know that they already confirmed that they're going to be doing fan experiences, which is something they already do, but they're going to lean in on that more. Game reveals and esports integrations at this upcoming BlizzCon. I think a couple things they have to do. First off, yes, announce that new StarCraft. But I think they need to introduce remakes, new IPs, make BlizzCon more about announcing other games, not just, continuations of your games. As much as I absolutely love it, to bring in new people, you have to do that. And I think there needs to be some Game Pass integrations. And I think everybody who buys a ticket should get 3 months of Game Pass, something like that. You need to make it feel more like you're entering this world and you have a world of games ahead of you, and everybody that goes there is going to be playing them for the next 3 months. And if you could integrate like World of Warcraft subscription with Game Pass, you would make everybody's day. And I think that's kind of the next step. You need to really kind of open up the doors a little bit more. And it feels like it was so exclusive that people were stopped showing up to try to get in. And now it's like, you need to invite them back in fast, And
that makes sense. I mean, at this point, World of Warcraft's been online for so many years that I doubt they're making a lot of money on new subscriptions, right? I mean, the people that are playing
a major part.
Yeah. So at this point, if they open it up to being accessible through Game Pass, it probably wouldn't lose them much money in subscriptions for World of Warcraft, but the amount of access that the players would be getting and people who never really thought about playing WoW, but are willing to give it a shot, they might now get locked into where it's like, okay, I'm never going to let my Game Pass subscription lapse because I don't want to lose my WoW, access. So I think that's just kind of a win-win for them to do.
Makes it a lot harder to cancel that Game Pass when you have WoW attached to it or vice versa. Yeah.
Right. And I agree too. I think they should have a lot of like exclusives that they release at the convention. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be, skins and DLCs and stuff like that are easy things that you can make exclusive to being at the convention, and badges and mugs and shirts and that kind of stuff. But they'll help build a camaraderie between the players that have that skin now. Oh yeah, I know that he went to the same convention I went to, and we can, BS about certain things we saw there or whatever. But it makes you feel special because you were there, the day of and stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing with BlizzCon and a lot of conventions. It's the in real life community that you built online. And in a world right now where we're building so many online communities, it's nice to have that escape that you kind of could go and meet your friends that you haven't seen in 12 years or something like that, all at this one BlizzCon. So we're going to be following this strictly, obviously, because we are very big fans not only of conventions, but specifically of this one. And as soon as we get more information and like hotels are booked, which Daniel already is like, should we book hotels? I'm like, no, it's 2 years from now, basically, or a year and a half or whatever. You're good because it's going to be in November again. Don't book a hotel yet.
September, right?
This one's going to be in November. BlizzCon's in November.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought the thing you sent out said September.
Absolutely could have been. And I'm double checking. It is September. Yes, you're right. It's normally November. That threw me off. But yes, so that's new too. But yeah,
my wife was already saying she wanted to do a Disneyland trip. Now we have a camping trailer. She's like, oh, we can bring the camping trailer down there, and there's a parking lot where you camp at Disneyland, and you don't have to pay for hotels. Like, that is a pretty good price. I was like, all right, you guys go to Disneyland. We'll bring the wives all down there, and they all go to the park while we go to the convention.
What a genius idea. Holy cow.
Right.
We might have something going on, guys. Here we go.
It's like the price of a one night in a hotel. You can get a whole week of the camping spot. So
really, I didn't know about those. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Damn, genius. Okay, let's move on to our Daredevil. So we've been watching Daredevil lately, right? We're on the 3rd episode. It was fantastic. And in it, there was a lot of symbolism showing Punisher. So we have some Punisher news. First and foremost, John Bernthal confirms that they have this Daredevil special coming up, basically a small movie coming up.
Mm-hmm.
He says it's going to be dark and uncompromising. He knows that
Daredevil special or Punisher special?
Punisher special. Did I say Daredevil?
Oh, okay.
Okay,
you did, yeah.
Okay, of course. I fucked that up. I always do.
That's
Punisher. And so he says, like, this is what we've always wanted to make, but we were restrained over at Netflix. But don't worry, we're not restrained due to maturity on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Which I think if you're watching Daredevil right now, you understand that Disney Plus is okay with mature content now, as long as you have the right setting.
I think they just don't show like blood and gore and guts, but they can show the violence without much issue. Yeah.
And you literally have to turn it on and off on your Disney account. So that is nice that you have that option. So he says, don't worry, that is definitely happening, that we're definitely going to make it feel real. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think is important is when we saw it in Daredevil episode 3, a lot of the cops had the Daredevil logo on their arms, tattooed on them, or on their clothing or what have you. And it was spray painted on walls. And it reminds me of what it harkens to is in a real life problem Marvel had. A lot of cops in America would put Punisher logos on themselves, on their cars, and it became a big problem. The citizens of those cities were protesting back saying, hey, you don't know what Punisher means, And the cops would argue that it's like, oh, it's because we're never going to let the criminals get away or something like that. And that's not what Punisher does. Punisher is...
he's a vigilante.
He's a vigilante
sure.
and he's killing people. He's literally a serial killer. And whether or not you like it or not, that's just what Punisher is. And that's not what you want your cop to be. And so there's protests across the country every time some police station would do this. Marvel would have to address this. The creator of Punisher, Gary, gosh dang, I don't have it up right now. That's his full name.
It's a long name.
Yeah. And he was even saying, like, guys, you guys are not getting what Punisher's about. I didn't make him to be a hero for cops. He is, again, cops should be hunting him. And so then, in response to this controversy, Marvel, in Punisher number 13 that came out in 2019, it was part of the 2018 run, put out an issue where a couple cops catch Punisher. They see Punisher and like, oh my God, it's you. They take selfies with him and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, we'll have to show everybody in the club. And he's like, club, what are you guys talking about? And he's like, yeah, most cops want to put you in the ground, but there's some of us who worship you, yada, 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 and point to a Punisher symbol on their car. Punisher then rips the symbol off, rips it up, and says, there's only one person who does what I do. You shouldn't want to do what I do. If you're looking for a hero, look to Captain America. And he rips up their logo and then, tells them basically to go F off. And that was Marvel saying, screw you guys. And now in the newer Punisher comic books, he doesn't use the skull anymore. He uses this demon head. So I believe that the next couple episodes of Daredevil will be about that, about cops misusing Punisher's logo and likeness. Punisher's going to have to come out of retirement to address that. And I think that the movie coming up might be about Punisher trying to reclaim his name. Do you think that's something that Disney would want to tackle, Marvel would want to tackle?
It sounds like I guess it's not directly political, but
it's close,
it could become it's the kind of thing that people would fight over, just like they do politics. It takes taking a stance for one side or the other of this specific argument. But yeah, I haven't seen Disney really pulling their punches much with any of their newer shows. So I think they've kind of figured what they can and can't do, and they're not afraid to kind of put stuff out there. So yeah, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't go for it.
Yeah, the whole thing for me is it definitely would become political quickly, especially since the logo often used in real life has the thin blue line in there as well, which is also associated with a political party, making it even more difficult. But I do like the idea of Marvel having to, or wanting to, address a real life issue that has directly impacted them. Like a lot of times you'll see things that are like, oh, that reminds me of this character or that character. This is literally something they've dealt with already. And so they have the lawyers who've fought these cases in court a few times. They've been a part of the protesting against cops using the symbol. They would have as a big, on their hood, giant, the police force, the skull. It just makes sense.
And he's a cop killer. Like he's killed many police in the process.
He hasn't want to, but corrupt ones for sure. Yeah. And like he definitely doesn't hold punches. Like again, Captain America's who you want. Put the shield on the front. But no, it's just, I always love it because it's like these dudes that do this clearly never ever read a freaking comic book in their life, let alone a Punisher comic book. It's like, go pick it up, guys, before you go like just thinking the skull looks cool, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be tricky for Disney though.
It'd be cool to see the internal battle or whatever between the police force. Not necessarily, I mean, Punisher is going to be in the city doing his thing, but this like divide between the police where some are like trying to explain like, no, this guy, he killed our brothers in arms, you know, several times. And he's out there he's doing our job, but he's doing it in a way that's illegal. He's stopping the criminals by murdering them and they aren't getting their due process.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the other ones are like, well, yeah, but there's too much red tape and we can't do our jobs. And these guys are running rampant in the street. He's just putting them on the ground. He's solving the problem. It's like, it would be more, to me, it'd be more entertaining to see the police kind of divide and then have this maybe civil war within the city, within their precinct of who's on what side. And I mean, hopefully not a full on war between the police, but fighting for the resources or tricking each other or some kind of feud between two halves of the police would be cool.
One of the wider themes of this season for Daredevil, I mean, it's only been 3 episodes, but it's clearly there, is vigilantism. And Mayor Fisk is clearly against the vigilantes. Daredevil he just got one off out of court. So he's clearly backing him as much as he's trying to not be Daredevil. He's still backing the vigilantes. And so I think that's going to be amplified going forward. Are these cops who are taking the law into their own hands vigilantes? I would argue, yes, bad ones. And then we have a villain coming up called Muse. Will Muse be seen as a vigilante? Probably in his own right. In his own mind, he thinks he's being a vigilante, but he's killing people. He's a serial killer. But it's like he thinks he's a vigilante. So then I think, but then we saw somebody like White Tiger in this last episode who was a vigilante who, when not wearing his costume or his amulet that gives him strength, still stepped in to try to defend a guy who's getting beaten up. He's a good vigilante. And one of the cops had referenced in the very first episode saying like, I think the vigilantes are just like us. There are good ones and bad ones. And I think that is going to be the through line for this entire season. And I hope that they take this time to kind of address that. Like there are good cops and bad cops. How do we empower the good ones? How do we catch the bad ones? And that goes forward with the vigilantes as well. You can't just put a blank sheet on all these guys saying they're all bad. And Mayor Fisk is trying to do that right now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, how do you work with because vigilantes are by definition not following the law.
Right.
So theoretically, legally, they're all bad ones, but you want to partner with the good ones and say, hey, we know, like with Daredevil, hey, we know you're not going to kill the criminals out there, but they overpower us. We can't go hand to hand combat with these criminals. So we need your help to stop them, but stop them and arrest them and then allow us to come in and take them into custody and due process. Like we need your force, but it needs to be contained within our law. So, how do you, it's at some point it's still excessive force if he's just beating him senseless into the ground. But if there are other mutants or there are other, super people that he's fighting, then it's like, okay, yeah, you're doing something the police can't do. So it kind of balances it justifies the means to stop them.
It's something that we've seen in real life when like all cops used to have just a handgun. And then eventually one of the criminals, it was the bank robbery down in LA. They used machine guns and suddenly everybody went to machine guns, cops too. So it was like just an escalation. This is that next escalation. And I look forward to them debating that out in a courtroom where they can really kind of talk it out. And then it reminds you of Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man is probably the best case scenario, right? Because he webs people up and then he leaves them there. They have like 1 hour on the web. All right, cops, there you go. Go do your arresting. He's right there. And I mentioned this over on social media. Like, what is it like for the rest of the MCU that lives in New York right now? Doctor Strange lives in New York, and now all of a sudden Kingpin's the mayor. How are they reacting to all this? I would love to get some little snippets of that, little cameos, That
would be good, yeah. Just like him watching the news, like, what the hell's going on out there? But he's got bigger fish to fry with.
He does. But so he's like, I might go to another dimension. What the hell? And he just like opens a portal and walks through. Yeah. Over here, the mayor's like Martha Stewart or something random like thing like that. Oh, man.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yes, it is. Let's shake things up. Let's get into our discussion for this week. John, the discussion for this week is the future of superhero cinemas. So we have a couple big movies coming up. We had one that just recently came out with Captain America: Brave New World. We have Superman, Fantastic Four, whatnot. And I think things are shifting quite a bit. Is there any tonal shifts that you're seeing out of the next crop of superhero movies from even the last 10 years of what we had?
Yeah. So what I believe we saw in the last 10 years or so, superhero movies started when we were kids, targeting us as the youth. Yeah. I don't think there was much. I mean, there was the old Batman and Superman, very old, low tech, not even really in comparison, but that was for a previous generation. Actual, putting money behind it and expecting good results was in our generation, and really a new generation started with the Iron Man 1 movie came out. Yeah. And then it snowballed from there. They saw how profitable that can be, and a lot of money started getting put into superhero movies. But I think we're getting to a point now where there's going to be a divide. We're starting to see movies that are made for the next generation, a younger generation, but still good, new, full action, I guess, movies that seem to be following, our older taste now that we're becoming, older adults and not in our 20s or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, movies like Shazam is a good example that's like, yeah, that's cute and all, but that's for the 12-year-olds or 15-year-olds. Yeah. I'm probably not going to go watch that in theaters, but, we still have, I don't know, all the MCU stuff, which is debatable, I guess. The MCU itself is really good, but it could be kind of seen as still trying to target the younger audience and not moving forward. Whereas I think we're seeing kind of DC decided we're going to take that little edgier, older audience route and, not stay targeting the teens, but we're going to move into the edgier, darker stuff that can be targeting the, 30, 40, 50-year-olds or whatever.
Yeah. I think with the last 10 years, especially with the MCU, I think they were going for that 4 quadrants, right? Where you have you take your grandma and you could take your kids and everybody's going to at least enjoy the fireworks. And then with DC, for sure, they had that edgier kind of like, we're just going to put everything in a dark tone. But I think for both Fantastic Four and Superman, we're seeing this shift into hopefulness that they could inspire us for a better future. I mean, with Fantastic Four specifically, Shackman had a lot of work on that. Matt Shackman, who does a lot of this Star Trek stuff. So you could see that Star Trek influence in there. Yeah, there is a way for us to figure this all out. And not everything has to be dystopian, like the end of the DCEU would be. So I do look forward to that. But I do want to bring up how you were talking about how there's these shifts, like these eras of superhero movies. And it reminds me of I just recently watched the 1978 Superman movie for Challenge Accepted. And then when that worked really well, they did a lot of sequels to it. And then they decided, we could do a Batman movie too and put money behind it. And again, go for the adults in the room too, not just the kids. Suddenly we had Michael Keaton Batman. And those were working well, but they kind of got sillier and sillier as time went on. And then you had Mystery Men kind of even making fun of how silly they all are. But then, boom, here comes Iron Man. Like you said, and there's a whole new thing. I think what we're seeing is that next tonal shift. And I think it's going to be more aspirational and not so gritty. Christopher Nolan's Batman wouldn't fit in this next Batman's world because he's so dark, gritty, and the most hopeful thing he did was apparently died to all of Gotham. Gotham thinks he dies, and then he just retires. And I was that's a hopeful ending. But that's not the hopeful ending that we really want for our characters. And it won't be what we see in the future. I think that's going to be shifting. And then there's the impact on streaming of everything before, a Batman movie came out once every few years. Now we have 2 Batman or 2 DC movies and the animated versions or the TV shows and stuff like that. So I think we have a problem with things getting a little oversaturated. Do you think that's something that they'll have to address?
Yeah, I think our entertainment industry as a whole is shifting because we talk about it almost every time we talk about a movie on here.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Is that'd be great as a miniseries or
yes.
so much stuff definitely we watch now is a series. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anybody else but Game of Thrones that really hit it out of the park where it's oh man, that's such a good, each episode is like a movie,
right? But
I can watch it at home week after week and everybody's talking about it around the water cooler.
Yeah.
So it's if they can do that with all these stories, it seems like it would just be more profitable for them to do it that route versus pump a ton of money into marketing and try to get people to show up in theaters. Because sometimes it's a home run and sometimes it's a big flop and they lose, $100 million in the process. So I feel I don't know, but I feel animated or a mini series or a full length series, if possible, is more like a safer bet, I think, for these stories moving forward in the future.
I think they're a place where they can explore things too. Like Moon Knight might not be something that translates well on the big screens, but he did great as a series until the final episode. Miss Marvel too, like you need her to have time to kind of like learn her abilities that might not look good on screen, on a big screen.
I think something like Stranger Things would not have been it wouldn't have been the same thing if you watched it as a movie. You know, you would have had to watch probably 3 movies to get the story that we got or more.
Yeah.
But it was such a great series to watch.
What about the connectedness of all these universes? And then again, bringing that to that series aspect versus the movies aspect, is that hurting or helping? Like when we had those standalone films, Kazam back in the day, or Steel, both Shaq movies, but like these are just standalone movies that stuck with us for so long. The Spawn movie, there's one that's not Shaq. But if that Spawn movie were to come out today, you bet your ass there'd be multiple of them. And then there would be the standalone Violator movie all about this killer clown. And, you know, like they would have forced it to connect because it's like, oh, that's just good. Do you think that's something that's hurting movies or helping the future of superhero movies?
To me, it's hurting. I mean, we know that MCU's had a lot of success with it. The Endgame and everything is huge moneymakers for them. But that being said, I think you can only have so many gods in one room before they all lose their power.
Yep.
If everybody in the room is the smartest man in the room, then everybody in the room's dumb because they're no smarter than the guy next to him. So, I remember talking about this with Thor years back when I think it was Thor 2 came out. But it's like in Thor 1, he goes from being this kind of punk college kid, you know, not taking life serious, to having the integrity of a god, that he deserves the power to wield his hammer.
Yeah.
And that's so awesome that he, you know, we got to see his character grow into the character that he is in the comic books and that we want him to be and stuff. At least I say in the comic books. I haven't read them, so I don't know.
I've read a lot of them, so I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then in the following movies, he's a laughingstock again, and he's just the bro who's kind of joking around, and they're trying to make him the funny one. It's like, well, no, he's supposed to be the regal, godly character who, you know, knows his North Star never moves kind of thing. So he knows exactly what's right and wrong, or he's very decisive. But, you know, because he's amongst other people too, other gods, other superheroes, then they all have to have their place and their dynamic and stuff. And he can't just be, you know, the biggest and the strongest. And then, you do that with all of them. I mean, you bring in Hulk, and then there's got to be somebody that can fight Hulk, and you bring in Captain America. Well, there's got to be somebody that can, you know, catch his shield, or there's got to be somebody else that can pick up Thor's hammer. And it just all makes everybody weaker by putting them together, in my mind.
You're also like forcing stories to happen, right? Like if you're going to bring in a rule, like only Thor could pick up the hammer, only somebody as worthy as Thor to pick up the hammer, that's like the Chekhov's gun in the MCU. Somebody's picking up that damn hammer. Now, did it create my absolute favorite moment in all of cinema? Yes. But when Captain America picks up that hammer, I lose it still today. But nevertheless, like you're forcing things to happen. There are all kinds of times where that happens. And
now I love connectivity within the same like story, the same world. Like when we see the Batman Gotham City, all the different stuff that happens with Batman, and then we want to see a one-off show of Catwoman, or a movie about Catwoman. That's awesome. And then like the
Penguin
HBO series we have with Penguin. It's like, those are great. Those can all be interconnected. And I want to see the shadow of Batman in the background. You don't even have to bring him in, but I want to know that he's in the city also. But you don't need to, all of a sudden Batman, you know, goes out into space and finds that Superman has a space station somewhere. It's like, whoa, hey, you don't need to connect the two, even though I'm sure they will eventually. But, you know, you can have a superhero have a great story, great many stories with just the characters that are in his own comic books and not have to cross them all over.
Well, looking at the future of superhero cinema, I think that's where they're making a change, because again, before we had these forced connections, we had a hard time, you know, putting like Thor in the comic books. Whenever he does with the Avengers, one of the classic moves is like, oh shit, we might lose this one. Lightning bolt. Nope, we're going to win it now. I love that about him. And he's got such good comics. Make sure you guys read them, Donny Cates. But with the future of him, I think we're seeing with like Daredevil, we're starting to see with this Fantastic Four, the fact that it's like in a different universe, basically, is they're letting them have their own standalone world. Like, let's go back to Moon Knight. You wouldn't know there's another superhero in the world in the Moon Knight stories until he like dies and they kind of reveal like, oh yeah, you could end up there or there. I think that's the way to go. And then going over to DC stuff like that. Yeah. The way that Penguin had a whole show that at the end, you were reminded that he's part of the Batman universe with the light. Worked great. And I'm fine with that. So I think that going forward, that might be something that they're trying to do, is keep them connected, There can be crossovers. Not everything has to be crossovers. Last thing, Captain America Civil War, which was really just Avengers like 2.5. That one was like the peak of we have to make all the action figures hit each other and not tell a great story. And that's a shame because like that could have been an Avengers movie, first of all. And we lost out on a really good Captain America movie instead. So I think Marvel, and especially in DC now, have learned their lesson a little bit. I'm hoping they embrace that going forward.
Yeah, I think any crossovers too, they need to be that rare candy, that ice cream for dinner kind of thing. Like you don't do that all the time. If you make it that like Daredevil's fighting and he just hears in the news that there's some masked man shooting spider webs, that's great. And we just want to hear it in the background. And then maybe someday he gets a wisp of him swinging by and he's like, wait a minute, what was that? I think that's him. And eventually Spider-Man does help him at some point or something like that. But it's like, don't just throw it all out there and, hey, there's 10 superheroes in the same room. Let's fight 10 bad guys that happen to be there too. It's like, well, that's too much at once. Like, let us savor the event and not just throw it all out there. And
the nods are delightful. Those little Easter eggs are delightful. I do want to keep hearing those. There should be no reason that Daredevil's watching the news and there's not mention of the Spider-Man flying around. One really deep cut that was in actually the latest episode of Daredevil is they mentioned Officer Morales, which is Miles Morales' dad, who, so it's like, oh, that's cool. They actually mentioned Morales. Very, very much of an Easter egg, probably even a deep cut, like maybe not even purposeful. But that was one of those things that was like, oh, it's rewarding the people who actually like to read the comics or know about, other characters. That is as connected as it really needs to be to make me very happy. Then let's move on to how they've shifted over with the visual effects, because I think we're filming everything on the same damn green screen. We already know that Secret Wars and Doomsday, they're filming it right now. They're like, we don't have to worry about leaks because it's all on green screen. It's like, shit, that's too bad. Because there's something to those movies where they film them, like the Thunderbolts movie feels very much in world, right? That doesn't feel like it's heavily green screen and they're just punching each other. And I'm more hyped for that than I am for a lot of other things.
So are they using a lot of green screen in that too? Or can you not tell the difference when they're doing so much green screen now?
You can, yeah. Oh, you could still tell the difference when they're using a lot of green screen. I could tell it like even with the Star Wars stuff. Andor scenes does a really good job. Andor when he's like in the middle of a city, a lot of that's green screen, but then when he's out on the side of the hills, whatever, those aren't. And you could just feel the difference. It's different lighting and stuff like that. While we've gotten far better at it, and more importantly for the studios, it's far cheaper now, you can still see the difference. And I think there is some value to having less CGI and more character-driven things. Think about it. Let's go back to Daredevil again. When they're in the courtroom debating the legitimacy of vigilantes and whether or not they mean good or bad, that has me on the edge of my seat just as much as watching a bunch of CGI Hulks fight each other.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to give those things their space.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we should try to dial back the CGI as much as possible, especially when it's just the setting that they're in. I get getting people and equipment on set somewhere in New Zealand or whatever. That's not easy or cheap.
Right.
But like you're saying, I think it gives you so much more watching it. And I mean, the actor is actually in the space versus having to, they'll feel the emotions of being next to a massive waterfall or something like that.
Great point.
Versus I'm in a room, it's literally all painted green.
Looking at a tennis ball that's going to be a dragon someday.
Yeah, I have to imagine that I'm doing this stuff. It's like great actors, they can do that, but I'm sure it's not the same result if we were able to compare them side by side.
So I'm hoping,
I think it's worth it.
I'm hoping in the future with superhero movies that they learn to scale it back, or at least use it sparingly. Use CGI to enhance your characters. Use it to like show traversal and things like that. We don't need it for everything. We don't need characters to be made out of CGI all the time. That will take a while because I think for both, I don't know, that new Superman trailer did look like it was pretty toned down in that sense. Matter of fact, even him flying real fast, people were like, oh, his face looks like it's CGI'd wrong. And he's in, James Gunn came out and said, that's no CGI. That's just us making it look like he's with a fisheye lens. Like that's actually all practical effects. That's a good debate to have. I liked that, Right? His dog is CGI, but he's actually laying down in some fake snow and stuff. Like that's real. So I think maybe DC will start off with lower CGI stuff. And Marvel will definitely have to take some time because the next two gigantic tentpole projects they got coming up, we already know is filming on full green screen. So I'm hoping that those, like that Ant-Man was so hard to watch. Quantumanium one.
It's too much. Yeah.
Way too
much.
And
I don't want us to normalize like an oversaturation of CGI because we already have to worry about technology taking over. It will not be hard for AI to completely generate an animated movie, without any actors involved and stuff like that. Should it be legal to do so at the time,
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, an entire industry will be destroyed and we would be the ones that lose. Short term, oh, cool. All kinds of, animated movies or all kinds of movies coming out that we like that are made overnight or whatever. But then the next year, all of a sudden, nobody's watching them. They're not making any money. It all gets shut down. And then we don't get any of the content we like. So
yeah,
I would definitely want to keep the industry healthy and keep people acting and, keep it going.
One of the things that's changed since the, like, say, early 90s of superhero movies when they really started putting some cash in there is the first off, the fan base in general, but also its influence on what they're watching. And I think today the fans have far too much influence. There is a level of like, well, we really hate the way Sonic looks. That's a really bad example because that was a good choice. Yeah. Good choice. But then all of a sudden they change it based off the fans' experience or opinions based off something, a trailer that came out. You need to like let it be put into the director's hands, not at the studio's hands either. Like the studio, they have to pay, cut the check. But still, I think that there's something too where we're facing too much fan input. Is there a way to curtail that?
So for an example, I know I haven't seen it yet, but all the talk about Snow White and how the dwarves were, first the dwarves were too offensive this way, and then they were too fake this way, and like they were back and forth and delayed the movie so much. And it's like, well, if you just made it and you released it, and then you found out, oh, you know what, the dwarfs were kind of offensive, deal with the heat. Okay, that's how a movie is made.
Yeah.
Or maybe ask the right people from, in small groups, but don't put it out there on the internet for everybody to debate about and make it a big public thing. No, have a small group that you survey about how this, makes you feel, and then let that be part of your development process. But definitely don't let the whole world know what you're already working on and then, keep delaying your movie, because now a lot of people are worried to even watch it because they're like, well, it's been passed around and twisted and turned so many times. Yeah. It doesn't even sound like it's, going to be good. I want to go see it still, but I'm worried I'm going to see it expecting it to be bad and hoping it comes out, better than I expect.
It's so crazy. Going with a Snow White, for an example, they're having a problem because like the conservatives don't want the movie because Snow White's not white. And then the liberals don't want the movie because Gal Gadot said things about Israel and Palestine. So it's like, who's watching this?
Right. You didn't nail down any demographic in this. So
it's going to be messy. Yeah. But with that, I think one of the things we've seen Marvel change already due to the fact that the fans have too much influence is calling their shot 10 years in advance. Because we're still technically in one of those paths, but they're doing it less. They're not calling things out like, oh, we're going to make Secret Wars and then this, and here's what the next 10 years of movies look like. They're doing that a lot less now. And I think that's because the fan reaction to every little delay, to every little thing that comes out is so dramatic. They can't keep up with
expectations. That. Yeah. You made this like kind of promise to the people that this is going to come out. And then, it takes a while to make it. And people are like, okay, well, I already know that's coming this year. So what are you doing next after that too? They count it as already sold. And it's like, well, hey, this takes a lot to do.
Yeah.
We still needed to go out in theaters and make a lot of money so we can afford to make the next movie. So, enjoy them. And I think that's a great presentation to have for investors, but definitely not to have for the general audience.
That's fair.
Each one needs to have its own, hype celebration, a big release. Like, hey, guess what, guys? We're going Deadpool 7 and, make it a big event. Yeah, not mapping it out for the next 10 years. That just doesn't do them any good.
Because even like with Captain America Brave New World, there were so many people saying, yeah, I'm not going to watch that one, but I'm looking forward to the Fantastic Four. It's like, no, stop. Watch what you want to watch, first of all. But then if you're looking for a Marvel movie, boom, give Captain America. Was it the best movie in the world? Hell no. But it was fun to watch. And that's kind of the reason you watch a movie. And, because people have so many expectations for what's to come, they'll not watch something. And that's a really good example with DCU, is I stopped watching all the DCEU stuff immediately as soon as James Gunn got announced. And so like the new Flash and all that stuff like that, I couldn't care less because it doesn't count anymore. That's not fair to those movies at all. And I think I was kind of right, but nevertheless,
And people take for granted that Disney has so much money and that they're so secure, and the MCU especially has been so stable, because with any other or most other, like not industries, other movie producers, I guess, if studio, there you go. Sorry. With any other studio, if they had, maybe 3 movies lined up that they're going to do back to back, and the first one didn't bring in big numbers, they would cancel the other 2.
Yeah.
So if you don't have people show out for this MCU movie, but don't worry, I'm going to watch that one that's coming out next year. well, you didn't go to the theaters. You didn't buy a ticket. Neither did your friends. So that one was a flop. And they decided they're going to cancel the next one that you were holding out to go see because obviously you're not interested in that kind of a movie now. So we in general, I think, take for granted that Marvel is just going to keep turning out these big movies because we see more down the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
But if it seems like Iron Man 5 is the only movie they're going to make for the next 10 years, yeah, people are going to, I think, go out and watch it and enjoy it. And
soak it in.
Yeah, and not take it for granted.
Last thing I want to discuss on this case is I think in the future, and we're starting to see a little bit of it. They tried it at one time. Now they're starting to do it again. Is mixing genres. Use the world of superhero movies or superhero genre really to add in other things. Let's go back to Daredevil. Mm-hmm. You could watch that as a hyper realistic crime drama just fine. The Penguin. Mm-hmm. If you did not know that Batman was in that world, you would not have missed anything. Mm-hmm. It was definitely just a Sopranos type show. And that is a really good way to spread your fandom. Mm-hmm. Our parents, you, me, we have the same parents, we're brothers. Everybody probably knows that at this point. They're over there watching Daredevil right now. And so I'm over there trying to explaining like Kingpin, he's this guy, this is the mayor. He's not normally the mayor and stuff like that. But they're loving the show because it's a really good story. It's not because of Daredevil being able to swing around or punch things and he's blind. It's because of the really cool crime drama stuff. So I think mixing genres is a way to really ensure that your base is constantly growing going forward. And there's no getting stale too, by the way, on that.
That's a good way to put it. I think it becomes a much more appealing to the mass audience. Mm-hmm. And like you're saying, the 4 quadrants, rather than just the comic book fans or just the geeks that know about the character. Yeah. Because like you're saying, if you don't know that Batman's in that Penguin world, it's like, it doesn't matter. Nothing is really about Batman or specifically about the Penguin comic books, or you don't need to know anything about it. It's a story being told fresh there. It's not dependent on any previous knowledge. So I think that makes it a lot better.
Let us know what you guys think about the future of superhero cinema. I thought this was a really good discussion. I think there's a lot there. And I mean, obviously it's our week to week based conversation for the most part. I mean, like a lot of it, what we're talking about is Superman and Spider-Man and stuff like that. And so to see how it's shaping and going forward is important for us. So we want to hear from you guys too. What do you guys think of the future of cinema look like? Jonathan, we're going to be talking about Invincible Season 3. You haven't watched it, so we're going to be doing our interview style. I'll give a quick synopsis for what Invincible Season 3 is like. At this point, Mark, our main character, has been pretty comfortably set into his life. He has a lot of relationships, and this season was all about fostering them one way or another. Cecil, the guy who's kind of like running the agency that's protecting Earth, they're definitely strained. And matter of fact, Mark's not working with him anymore. But there is this understanding that we still have to be friends. This will be a spoiler-filled review, by the way, guys. And we'll discuss it much farther on Challenge Accepted, or it's already out, so check that out. But Mark and his mom are doing really well. Mark has a new brother that is experiencing the world for the first time, and Mark is kind of seeing the angstiness that he had, but also some of his dad in there. And his dad, of course, being this like monstrous killer who in his own right is kind of growing into a decent person in a way. He's starting to see flecks of that in his brother, and like the whole idea of like, oh, dad isn't all bad, right? He's like, no, dad is bad. He planned on killing Earth, stuff like that. And then, of course, bringing in the relationship with Eve, a character we all knew that they were going to get it together eventually. But the fact that their relationship is now solidified and now is thriving, and we have a teaser of pregnancy coming for the next season, that there's so many things happening right now for this crew that is just really cool. And we had some of the best fights in animation. Holy cow. The last episode, for some reason, IGN, they're idiots, gave it a 4 out of 10, while everybody else is giving it a 10 out of 10. So wild. It was crazy, crazy fight scene. And if you have never seen Invincible, but you just want to watch cool anime style fights, obviously this is a Western animation, but nevertheless, you got to at least watch episode 3 or season 3 finale. It's so crazy good. John, let's go ahead and begin. You got any questions for me?
I do. So this sounds like a really good show. I'm surprised I haven't watched it, but I know it's a little more edgy, right? It's like
you cannot even watch it with your
animated.
I always tell you, like, you can't watch this with Marco. This one you can't watch with your wife. It's so brutal. Yeah.
Right. Because for the longest time I didn't watch The Boys, and then finally I started watching it. I just when I have time.
Right.
Not very often, but little by little. But it sounds like it is that kind of superhero show, right? Where it's definitely more vulgar, more edgy, but obviously fully animated too.
Right. Yes, it is that way. The violence is very real. Like, for example, during this fight with this guy named Conquest in this last episode, which, by the way, Jonathan, for you hated how Negan killed Glenn. in
Yeah.
Walking Dead. Well, Mark is played by Glenn, and
Yeah.
Conquest is played by Negan, and the script
The
got
other way
reversed.
around.
Glenn got
Nice.
revenge. But
Right.
there's one part where, like, of course, Conquest is trying to show Mark, who is part Viltrumite, which is, again, this like alien race. It's like all Kryptonians, essentially. Showing him like humans are nothing. He's literally takes Mark's head and like is running him through a city just through people.
Yeah.
And just like shit, like just obliterating them, just to kind of show how like they're nothing, Mark C kind of thing. And that's hard to watch if you're not like ready for it.
Oh man, that's like that's the one person got exploded in The Boys, and it became this
Yes.
huge thing for the whole series. And
Yeah.
So could you see? I mean, obviously, this sounds like it's based on just great writing.
Mhm.
Just hearing you talk about it, I'm imagining like, man, this is an animated series. So I think so many people aren't seeing it because it's animated, but it sounds like such a well written like novella. Like you want to tell this story on a different platform. Like if this was live action, it would be all over the news or something like that. So,
Right.
so for like question for you, do you think if we had this story retold or the same writers making a similar story of the same type, but live action, do you think it would do a lot better?
I don't think it could be. Well, I don't think so, because first off, this is written by Robert Kirkman, the guy who made Walking Dead. This is
Yeah.
one of his most popular comic book runs. And the reason I don't think it could be is because the budget you would need to make this effectively in live action, it's
Mhm.
like a Superman movie every week.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, the fights are so big. The scale of everything's so big. Eve, who's his girlfriend, basically has Green Lantern powers, but even more because you can actually manipulate matter. So then you're constantly doing CGI every time she's on screen. It would be nearly impossible to do that for this. I wish people would give it a shot though, because even taking away like all the cool fight scenes, the story of a guy who, I mean, the first season, just to kind of give everybody a quick rundown if you didn't know this, Mark finds out, or Mark's dad is basically Superman, but Superman is there. His name's Omni-Man, is there because his race, the Viltrumites, sent him to Earth to get it ready to be a breeding planet because humans are close to their race. And so he's there to basically enslave all humanity, but Mark doesn't know that yet. He's seen as Superman. So at one point when he's about to enact this plan, Mark, who was raised on Earth by a human mother, tries to fight back and defend. And basically Omni-Man just like beats the hell out of him and saying like, everybody around you is going to die. You're going to live forever. So you need to understand that these guys are puddles in your wake, and just like leaves him half dead on the side of a mountain, then flies off. And it's like so brutal of an ending, but that's the stakes, is now knowing that there is this planet of basically Krypton out there who sees Earth as a breeding planet, who conquer all the other planets. And how are you going to defend? And you have Mark, who's the strongest, not purebred Viltrumite. But then you have a lot of people who are like Batman level heroes. They're like, you can't stand up to Superman either. And it's very complicated relationships. There's a lot of things that come up, like how does a superhero make money? Well, Mark in this season took on a gig. It was his idea to be the like emergency security guard for the nearby prison when that like imprisons a lot of supervillains. So when one of them breaks out and it's something your guards can't handle, call me up. I'll be on retainer like a lawyer is. I'll come over and I'll take care of it. And that's how he makes income enough to support a family, And so it's just little things like that you don't think about when you watch a movie, but this show can really flesh out.
Nice. Man, that sounds so good.
It is very good.
So could you think of a spin-off series, or could you see them making a spin-off series based on this?
There are spin-off comic books that are about certain characters that are in this, like Alan and Battle Beast. Like they all have kind of these spin-off comic books. But there's many times, like even we had the Invincible War where this one guy, God, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he has the ability to open up dimension doors. He brings in a lot of Invincibles from other dimensions where he turned bad to take over. So it's the Invincible War where he just basically wipes out all the major cities where they do. And in the comic books, from my understanding, all Image comic characters come to help. So Spawn helps and like all these different like big Image people do. So there are definitely like a connected universe if they wanted to, like it's already established in the comic books, but for the TV show, I don't think so. I think they're just going to stick with this for the most part.
Okay. And is there anything you can think of that you think they could have done differently or changed to make it a little bit better?
The one complaint, like the big thing with IGN, which is, again, I agree, is stupid. They're like, well, Conquest came in and he had no setup. He was just the villain at the very last episode, was immensely powerful, and that was it. Well, the reason that he makes sense is because that's what the stakes are, is that every single day, you don't know when the Viltrumites are going to attack. And they're just kind of throwing people over there to kind of mess with Mark, to kind of hold him down a little bit while they're getting ready for this invasion or whatever. And so that makes sense, but they didn't make that. I think that makes sense. And before that, a lot of the season was about, hey, when you fought this one superhero, you took out half of New York. There's now a memorial over there. Can you go to the memorial? And like Mark's having a hard time going to the memorial because, and one of his newer villains, Powerplex, is a guy who's, it's such a brutal story. I'm going to tell it though. His niece and sister die when a building falls over that like Invincible is thrown through or whatever. And Invincible tries to catch it, but they die in the process. So this guy who has a minor ability to like create little electric fields whenever he gets hit, he ends up like working for the government, and he finds out there's this tech where he could plug these like discs in him to make that as powerful, way, way stronger. And of course, when Invincible's main power is punching hard, the ability to turn that into energy would make you a very good counter to him. So now all of a sudden, this guy who was like a nobody is now a very good counter to Invincible. And he's trying to get revenge on Invincible, not necessarily revenge, but like have him accountable for how many people died when you fight anybody. And, you know, the collateral damage to not only the city, but also the people. And in that process, you know, he's struggling. So he takes his wife and his daughter. His wife is fully on board with this. They go to an abandoned place, and he gets on the radio, or he gets on like the news station or whatever, or he tweets it out or whatever. Hey, I got 2 hostages here. Come and try to stop me, Invincible, just to get him out there. Well, Invincible shows up, and they do fight. But just as we saw what happens with Invincible is like when you have those immense powers, it's hard to restrain them in the middle of a complex fight. Well, during this fight, Powerplex is throwing as much lightning as possible. He ends up killing his daughter and wife.
Damn.
Yeah, or son and wife, whatever. And burns them up to pieces, and then he just collapses, and it's like the exact thing that you were mad at Invincible for, you are now part of. And it's like, that's a storytelling right there for Invincible. And like, that's a great villain, but then all of a sudden, like, why not make that the full villain? Well, it's because that guy's in prison now, and he's going to be here, and he's going to be there. And you don't throw villains away when they're that well written. You use them again in the future. And so that's what the Vulture Bites are for. You just like throw them out there to get hit and punched, and then, you know, you're done. That's fine. The good ones you save. Yeah.
Man, that's good writing. Yeah, that's like,
I think you're watching Invincible next week, aren't you?
I think so. I gotta finish getting caught up on Daredevil though. But
oh yeah, you do.
That'll be next on my list. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of any more questions though. It sounds like such a good show.
It's
amazing. It sounds like just really good writing. So it reminds me of the writing, not that these are really similar in any way, but how good the writing is for Avatar, and yet everybody sees it as this little kid's cartoon. Yeah. It's like, I know it looks like a kid's cartoon, and it's silly sometimes, but the writing is so good. Like, you just got to sit down and watch it.
The writing is spectacular in this. We lost some really big characters. One of the big questions in this one is Cecil, who's running, like, let's just say it's the CIA for superheroes. He's kind of getting worried about Mark. He's like, I have to be able to defend myself in case you go off crazy. And so one guy who creates like these zombie soldiers, it's a villain he beat before, he's like, I'm going to use that tech because that tech seemed to have slowed you down last time. So then Mark's pissed off. He's like, and he like one guy that was able to fight against Mark pretty well or whatever, he recruits him as one of the soldiers to help him. So Mark's pissed. He's like, why are you bringing these guys back? They should be in prison. He's like, I need every tool at my disposal. What are you kidding me? Like, I'm dealing with Supermans. So there's like this real moral dilemma and stuff like that constantly going on. And yeah, if you were to be like, oh, animation is for kids, you are missing out on some of the best storytelling on TV right now. Yeah, it's a shame.
I like it.
Yeah. So check it out, guys. I gave it a 9 out of 10, but I really struggled. I almost gave it a 10 out of 10. There were some pacing things here and there, but for the most part, if you are a superhero fan at all, I'm not even saying animation, superhero fan at all, you must watch Invincible. The first 2 seasons are out. Prime.
Okay.
It's a must watch. But yeah. All right, let's go ahead and shift into a new gear. We're going to be talking about network news as we close things out. Anime Plus, our newest show, part of the network, they're talking about new manga. John, have you ever read a manga?
No, I don't think so. I had a friend in high school that was reading them all the time, but I never read one myself.
Super fans. I'm surprised how fast you go through them. I thought like, oh, this is like a chapter book, but comic book. You fly through those bad boys. The way they're like written is like for action. So you're like just flipping so you can see all the action happening. It's pretty cool.
My friend would sit in the aisle of the bookstore and try to get through one, and then she'll buy the next one.
That first off, that's so shady, and I love it. Is this, not to call out names, but Julie?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was Chloe.
Chloe, okay. I love that. That's such a good move. But that's how fast you can read through them. Like, you go through them pretty quick. They just look big. Outlast Podcast, Season 12. We're doing Season 12. Jonathan, I want to know right now, who are your 2 favorites for this season of Survivor 48?
Mine are Mary and Thomas, and I got super nervous because I was like, well, Mary's on the bottom, but she seems, crafty or whatever. And then it was like, oh crap, no, she's going out. She's gonna get voted out. I was like, I have to change my pick real quick. But no, she's still in, and now even more so, I think she's gonna make it to the end,
With the
surviving this tribe. Yeah.
Do you know Susan's?
I don't.
Okay.
I think she liked Charity, but I don't know.
Oh, Charity's a left card. That's crazy. You're a wild card.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we were
Thomas,
talking about too. I was like, you kind of want. I don't know. She likes the ones that survive a tribe that shrinks like that early on.
Yes.
But it's also good to get the ones that are like quiet, that don't have a lot of screen time early on because they're not trying to make big moves.
Right.
Because once enough people get knocked off of the top, the ones that are loud and shifting around and stuff, and then those ones, pull ahead as the star players that are, been there long enough and made a lot of alliances with other people and stuff.
She's not entirely wrong though. I mean, like the last few seasons, it seems like whenever they get beaten up in the first half, they tend to thrive because they're already playing the game by the time the merger happens.
Yeah.
So there is something there. Thomas is a surprise pick. I'm kind of surprised by Thomas, but
Yeah.
he does seem to be like the only one not telling everybody about idols, which is why is that a hard thing? Come on.
Right?
Oh man.
I think people will trust him a little too easily, and
yeah, that's why
he's
Mom's
already got
picking
kind of
Mitch. Everybody trusts Mitch.
But I think Mitch is too good to be with him in the final three. I think people are going to keep him from making it to the end just because, it's like, oh no, I can't win against Mitch. I got to get him out one way or another.
That's the same thing with Joe. We made Joe the podcast favorite just because, first off, none of us can pick him. All of us would pick him, but also he's too nice. He's too likable. He's going to be picked up because of his likableness, which is just, that's how it is.
Yep.
All right. For Challenge Accepted, again, we're talking about Invincible over there, a full deep dive on that one. Fandom Portals just did Spider-Man No Way Home with Megan from Vigilante Vibes. She was on our show at one point, so you guys can visit her again over on Fandom Portal. Headlines is coming out daily. We're going to be on more podcast platforms now, so check that out. Again, it's just basically the news in a quick bite-sized 1-minute podcast. And then we're going to be at a new convention on April 5th. This is the Rancho Cordova convention. We were at it last year. That was their very first year. This is the second one, and things are really heating up. We have a brand new prize wheel that is taller than me. I'm so excited about it. It's like my baby. I love that damn prize wheel so much. So come and hang out with us, guys. Rancho Cordova, April 5th. It's at the town or the City Hall for Rancho Cordova, guys. That'll be a lot of fun. Let's end things off with our recommendations of the week. Jonathan, what is your recommendation of the week?
So this is going to be a little controversial, but I do still want to see Snow White. So that comes out Friday. So
okay.
If you guys can handle it, go see it. Let me know what you think. But there's other movies out. I haven't had a chance to go to the theaters in so long.
Yeah.
Mickey 17 I want to see. Novocaine looks good. I probably won't see it in theaters. I'll wait for it to come home.
Yeah.
But I've heard a lot of good things about the movie Black Bag also.
Oh, I have too.
So
yeah, crazy.
If you have time and just, nothing to do, go to the theaters, watch any one of those.
Yeah. You're going to be doing our review for Snow White. So we could
definitely
see how good or bad it was.
I'm like 99% sure the wife still wants to go see it. So if we all go see it, then me and her can do a review together.
Yeah. This is going to be, you thought you had a crazy review here or a crazy suggestion. Here's mine. Mm-hmm. My newest collecting thing, because I just like to collect things for the sake of collecting things, are old Goosebumps.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I told myself, all right, if you're going to start this new collection, because it's like something we used to love as kids, we'd go to garage sales, quarter, you get a Goosebump. Now they're worth a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. And I want to pick up the ones from the 90s. But I was like, if you're going to pick them up, you have to read them. And you know what? Those are kind of fun little reads. They're absolutely not complicated. They're meant for kids. So if you're wanting something that's I actually am literally reading them while I'm watching TV. That's how lightweight of a read they are. Mm-hmm. They're really good next to your couch books to have. They're 120 pages big. Make you feel like a freaking genius when you're flying through a book like that.
Right.
Check out Goosebumps, guys. I swear, I might have to send out an email to R.L. Stein like, hey, can I make audiobooks for your books?
Right.
See if he's cool with that. That'd be awesome. But yeah, guys, check out Goosebumps. So such a weird recommendation, but what the hell?
Nah, that's good.
All right, guys. We have a convention on April 5th. Set that on your calendars, guys. Come out to Rancho Cordova with us. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.